Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all doing well, and welcome to this community showdown. It's going to be Khorne, led by Bagosh, facing off against the Wood Elves, who shall be helmed by Anticity here on Chateau de Roquefort, and I believe this was the grand finals of a tournament. So, let's see what's cooking. For the forces of the Blood God, which has, it kind of looks like, yeah, no, that banner looks pretty Wood Elf. This one always can kind of catch you off guard a little bit, but in the front line, it is going to be two Khorne Gores in Vanguard. Now, Khorne Gores against Wood Elves do have some applications against Glade Riders, Wild Riders, ZOATS, things like that. Tree Men, and Anticity is known for using a lot of cav, so opening up with Khorne Gores isn't necessarily a bad idea to get the Vanguard. However, they are going to be having pretty monumental trouble against the Skirmishers here. The Glade Riders don't do a ton of damage, but Khorne Gores don't have too much mitigation, if any, against missiles aside from their armor. So yeah, they are going to be taking some missile fire to the face. On top of that, it's going to be Valkia. Valkia is very good in this matchup. She's elusive, can fight a multitude of Wood Elf characters, does have Sloughnir, which does great damage against Wildwood Rangers, for example, and it's just a menace to deal with. The rest of the build is going to be very cool. It's kind of old schools, because back in the day in Warhammer 2, and for the earlier parts of Warhammer 3, once we got the Immortal Empires, Chaos would basically armor check the Wood Elves, just sending a front line of good quality Chaos Warrior equivalent infantry, just to kind of push them back using the Silver Shields. Now, that build got a little bit riskier when the Wood Elves got access to the Anti-Infantry Wildwood Rangers. Of course, Blade Singers are there as well to cause problems, but it could still be good. Chaos Warriors of Khorne in the front with Marauders. I think it's a combination of both, kind of mix and match. And on the outside here is going to be more Chaos Warriors and more Chaos Warriors of Khorne. So a whole bunch of those guys. So for Anticity, it is going to be a mobility build. So he is going to be using a bunch of Glade Riders. And here in the center, Wildwood Rangers. Very, very good in this matchup. Now, one of the better ways to deal with Wildwood Rangers for Khorne is to use monstrous units. So using Fleshhounds, using Blood Beasts of Khorne, Minotaurs, any of those units are going to be able to really take Wildwood Rangers to pound town. So they're there, and in the backfield we do have a Spellweaver of Life who is going to be using Flesh to Stone. Interesting. So going to be using this to get probably Disgusting Ward Save on the ZOATS. So ZOATS are physical resistance units. I know ZOATS can get it from their Flesh to Stone, but they don't have a baseline. But if you do have like a Dryad, for example, that has 20% Phys Res, you can use Flesh to Stone, put them up to 80%, and there are a couple other combos you can do that with. Blade Singers, for example, do have 20%, so you can put them up to 80%, so they become super raid boss for a short period of time. Very, very cool stuff. Alright guys, let's get this going and see how this game is going to be unfolding. So in the middle, we do see some Flesh Doggies trying to grab Objective 2, but they are going to be harried off by Anticity Spellweaver here. And on the outside, Ent is going to be farming some value here, using his Glade Riders to poke into the Khorne Gores. Like I said, Khorne Gores don't have too much mitigation against missiles outside of their 60 armor, so they're not going to be absolutely squishy like some, Pestigore, for example. Though Pestigores do have built-in missile resist, but yeah, they're going to be eating some shots for sure. But moving up, trying to screen these guys out, and here comes the Warrior Wall. So really going to be putting the urgency on Ent, right? Dealing with this much armor and this much HP is very, very tough. We do see the Marauders have 9,000. Chaos Warriors have 9,000 as well. 100 models, 110 armor. That is very meaty, whereas when you look at the Wood Elf Infantry, for example, they only have 8,400 HP compared to the 93 of the Marauders of Khorne. Alright, so in the woods, we do see the Khorne Gores hanging out, and honestly, it's probably not a bad trade for them to eat those shots in the woods, because a lot of the ammunition that is going to be coming out of the Wood Elf army here is going to be shooting into the trees, and is going to be essentially getting wasted. More Chaos Warriors moving up, and Bagosh is going to be saving up his supplies, whereas Anticity, what has he been calling in? It looks like mainly mobility pieces, yeah. So we do see the Wild Hunters of Khorne on the outside, which are going to be very nice here. They do magic damage, so they're a great counter against the Fleshhounds of Khorne. Anti-large against Blood Beasts, Minotaurs, Armor Piercing, a really, really good unit. So here comes the summon from Bagosh. Bagosh here is going to be calling it a bunch of hounds. So Chaos Warhounds, 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 and Warhounds. Wow, homie calls out 3 or 4 Warhound units. Now, these guys certainly can do some work against the Skirmish Cav if they can catch them, but that's going to be the hard part. The Skirmish Cav, I believe, are a little bit quicker. Let's go ahead and check. So these guys are poisoned, but 95 speed base, 94. So pretty much the same amount of speed. And it does provide a lot of capture weight for Khorne, though. So if Anticity is going to be playing that style where you bounce between objectives, a lot of capture weight, and just kind of be a gremlin, it is going to be giving Khorne a little bit of counterplay in the sense that the Hounds are going to be able to bounce between the objectives, provide capture weight in very desperate circumstances, and, kind of do their thing. Over towards the middle, objective number 2 is going to be taken by the Wood Elves, as is objective 1. So Ent is going to be parking using the double ZOATS with the Wild Hunters of Khorne. Is pretty heavy metal, and it looks like they are going to be charging in a second. But Chaos Warriors with 110 armor, and even though, their melee defense isn't as high as their Nurgle cousins, it's still pretty meaty. And look at that, Loic's Blessing activated. That's pretty funky there. All right, Turtle People charging downhill. Blade Singers getting into combat as well. Certainly going to be a very, very good fight for the Wood Elves, as the Khornate Warriors will take big casualties from the big armor piercing coming in here. And you can see the Blade Singers do pull back. A little bit of hit and run there. letting the ZOATS battle the Chaos Warriors. But so far, the Chaos Warriors trading back reasonably well considering the circumstances. The other Chaos Warriors here are going to be getting hammered by the Wild Hunters of Khorne, as well as the ZOATS. So the much more static army here of the Blood God is having a little bit of trouble out of the gates, keeping up with the mobile army here, but, you know, they can grind for sure. Chaos Warriors still have 90 models right here. These Chaos Warriors still have 66. And look how much damage they're able to do back against the Enigmas of Giron. I mean, that's really, really good. They were fighting 2 hard counters, and those bad boys of the Blood God were really, really able to shine there. So objective 3 firmly in the clutches of Khorne. And now big fighting going to be erupting in the middle as Bagosh is going to be calling in his first heavy hitters. And it is going to be the big Harambes of Khorne. Yes, the Blood Beasts. And yeah, they're solid. They hit very, very hard, and they're kind of a generalist unit. Good against infantry, good against cav, and they are going to be L-bonking these Wildwood Rangers pretty badly. Now the shield wall is moving up, and Anticity is not going to have the girth to really match this infantry push. Most likely we'll be able to wrestle the middle eventually. Out here on the far side, really, really nice Sloutnir going down there on the Blade Singers. Activated ability from Valkia. Valkia also going to be using her anti-large to poke down some of these cav. And the Khornate Warriors trading well, as Furies are now going to be descending onto the Wild Hunters of Khorne. So, Warriors moving up. On the outside, some of the Khorne Gors advancing out of the bushes. They were very, very deep in enemy lines, but the Khornate Infantry really going to be doing that nice bump and grind here, supported by a lot of Chaos Warhounds. And the Warhounds actually able to put some good DPS on the Glade Riders, despite the Flesh to Stone. And these are Marauders here. So the Marauders are going to get pounded by Wildwood Rangers, but better to have the Marauders take the beating from the Wildwood Rangers and your Chaos Warriors head on. And now the Chaos Warriors can pile in. And Khorne, you know, baseline Chaos Warriors do have 44 melee attack and 40 weapon strength. They're kind of semi-elite. They hit very, very hard. So the fighting rage is on, and Bagosh is pulling a bit of a value lead. All these little grinding engagements all over the battlefield have been going pretty good for him. Here we see the Chaos Warriors grinding into the ZOATS. Furies were able to put some pressure onto the Wild Riders here. And now the infantry really, really able to mobilize up on the point here. On the outside, some Khorne Gors AFK, so Bagosh did forget about those guys, which does feel a little bit bad. But overall, Khornate Chaos Warriors trading pretty cost effectively into the Wildwood Rangers, surprisingly. But they do have a little bit of support from the Blood Beasts, which hit incredibly hard, like I said, 155 weapon strength. More Warriors, more Khorne Gors really moving in. I mean, all those points that were spent from Ent here on, of course, the range units were very nice early on, but when it gets into a bump and grind here, the infantry heavy army with the more, just more things, more bodies to throw in there is going to have an advantage, right? So Valkia battling it out versus ZOATS with her anti-large. Furies descending on the lines here, attacking into some of the ZOATS. ZOATS are anti-large, so using Furies against them isn't terrible, because ZOATS only have 23 melee attack, which is insanely low. I mean, when they're debuffed right now. But basically, they're going to be very subpar against most infantry-sized things. Not terrible, but you know they still hit hard when they do connect, but they're not going to connect as effectively. So middle objective, going to be going to the Blood God. We do see a lot of the skirmish cavalry of Ent and the ZOATS having a little bit of trouble. Granted, the Blade Singers are really putting in work. It looks like he has been focusing on using Flesh to Stone on those guys non-stop, which has made them extremely durable in these grinds. And that is one of the buff spells. It lasts so long. I mean, this is an upgraded one. I think it lasts over 30 seconds, which is pretty crazy. So, side objective here. We do see Bagosh is going to be guarding it with some Chaos Warriors, some Khorne Gors, AFK in the woods right there. Meanwhile, the Blood Gods champions continue fighting up at the point, and now the Harambes have gotten back in here. And ZOATS will trade very well in the Blood Beast, but Blood Beast will punch them back with a little bit of support. So they've gotten in, and kind of the cool thing about Blood Beast is they have very good baseline leadership. So their staying power is actually pretty good. Not in terms of their durability and defense and whatnot, but in terms of just staying in a fight and, you know, really karate chopping there. All right, so they're going to be punching through, moving and a grooving. Valkia the Bloody going to be descending from the skies and getting ready to party where she can. In the meantime, we do see the Elven army really starting to get worn down. The Blood Beasts of Khorne, the Chaos Warriors, as well as these Marauders over here, still fighting the good fight. So now it looks like Anticity falling behind in Valley very heavily, is going to be falling back on his mobility. So what he's going to be doing most likely is bouncing between the back objectives here, trying to capture the side objectives using capture weight, maybe use his Great Stag Knights to swarm these Chaos Warriors and play the objectives now. Is probably going to be his best bet. He is up on points pretty heavily, so it could be one of those games where he can win on objectives as well. And we have seen players gremlin their way back from value deficits like this. The Wood Elf army doesn't have any traditional healing, I don't think. I know the ZOATS do have the Earthbloods, which is pretty nice, and the Flesh to Stone, but I do not think that we are going to be seeing any Lore of Life. Yeah, it's all just straight up Flesh to Stone coming out of the Spellweaver here. All right, Wood Elves are resurgent on the middle objective. Going to be pushing in with Glade Riders and Dryads, and a couple Skirmish Cav going to be sitting on the edge of the objective for a little bit of capture weight. But Bagosh is also going to be reinforcing as well, bringing in the Blood Beasts of Khorne. And once again, those Chaos Monkeys are really going to be laying a beat down on whatever they can catch. Really, really high melee attack, a great weapon strength at 155. And the middle objective still in flux, but the fight probably a little bit better for Khorne. I mean, Chaos Warriors are a unit designed to grind. I mean, not as grindy as like an Urgle Warrior or anything like that. And it does look like on the other side, we do see the Blood God's Hounds going for the side objective. Tried to get it, but Anticity was able to catch them. And these are just basic Warhounds of Khorne. They're not going to be, fancy Flesh Hounds. Flesh Hounds would normally defeat the Glade Riders, but the basic Hounds, they have not ascended to Flesh Houndhood, are going to be forced to retreat as they are pushed back right there. So back on the middle point, the fighting does continue to rage on. Chaos Warriors versus Dryads. Dryads will do okay, but Chaos Warriors will typically beat them, simply because Dryads do lack the armor piercing to really get through the armor of the Chaos Warrior, who's hitting around 100. Pretty savage stuff. And a big rout going down for the Wood Elves right here. Anticity getting pushed back pretty heavily by the Chaos Harambe's, the Khorne Warriors defeating the Dryads here, and the other Blood Beasts of Khorne looking to be pretty good. So macro look at the battlefield, ladies and gentlemen. Anticity does have a pocket of strength over here to the south of objective number 2. A couple mobility pieces, but really nothing that's going to be able to trade super well. Stag Knights do get in there, charging into the Blood Beast. Blood Beast, though, their base leadership is pretty nuts at 75 for such a unit. Trolls, for example, are like 45 base leadership, and I don't know what Minotaurs are. I think Minotaurs are pretty high, but maybe not as high as the Blood Beast of Khorne. So, Khorne gets its clutches here, and now is going to be moving on the side objective. Really, really interesting play from Bagosh. Something I noticed that's different about his playstyle is he uses very infantry-heavy armies, but then he reinforces hardcore with like cheap hound units. Very, very cool to see. No Marauder Horsemen in sight, right? Marauder Horsemen against Wood Elves are okay. It's good to have in case of like Wild Durthu pick or something like that, but I guess Blood Beasts of Khorne can maybe fight those. So the Chaos Harambe's do get overextended a little bit and probably are going to be meeting the end of the road here at the hand of the Turtle People. So here comes the Zoats, going to be laying a bit of a boinking on these guys, and we're going to see if they can connect, and yes, they do. Blood Beasts of Khorne sitting at 4 leadership, and more Blood Beasts on the way in, defending the objectives here. Chaos Warriors, Hounds over here. So this objective is very fickle. It's only a couple of Hound units, although we do see a Flesh Hound over there. Flesh Hounds will lose to Wild Riders, but they will be able to defeat the lighter cav, like the Glade Riders and things like that. With the Khornate reinforcements, the Blood Beast able to get the job done. Anticity going to be rolling over here. And you'll notice how he's saving up a lot of points right now. I suspect it's because he's going to be calling in a big burst of units. Yeah, it's pretty common tactic in domination mode. When in a very kind of a game when you're playing from behind, especially, you put your efforts on one side and then they're going to lax on their defenses, and then you call out 4 speedy units like this. Tomb Kings do this all the time with Skeleton Horsemen, and that's going to be 4, 8, 12, 16 capture weight coming in, right? So they would need 3 infantry units to be able to out-capture you. So very, very good kind of surprise tactic coming in here from the Kraken King, and a good lesson for those of you guys watching here. Objective 1 going to be going back to the Wood Elves, but objectives 2 and 3 looking very cozy for the Blood God, as Dryads are on their way in with a couple Wildwood Rangers, and the Spellweaver of Life with the Flesh to Stone will be somewhat useful. I mean, I just feel like he's probably experimenting here. I would say at the end of the day, probably just using like Earthbloods would be more cost effective, especially with Zoats and Wild Riders and things like that. But, the Fizzraz combo is cool. It does last a long time and probably did make a difference in some of the fights. So Royal Rumble is going to be going down as the Chaos Beasties do charge into those Wildwood Rangers who do get the Flesh to Stone. So the Fizzraz is there. And I wonder what he's doing with Loix Blessing. Stock and Unspotable, it gives him a speed buff, and then also Fizzraz for a long time. Okay. So that is going to be going down. Blood Beast attacking in here. Meanwhile, the Chaos Warriors of Khorne are going to be battling it out with the Dryads, and the Blood Beasts on the other side are going to be probably able to hold the line. I mean, Anticity might be able to flip this objective, but I suspect that Khorne, having a full health Chaos Warrior here, as well as Blood Beast of Khorne, most likely going to have a very good time in this trade. Over here on Objective 2, Khorne is sitting there with a couple Hound units, a couple Warriors. Anticity going to be flexing his micro here, moving in, but Bagosh able to react very quickly, and smart plays from Bagosh. Smart, safe plays. Reinforcing with infantry, trying to, not panicking and just sending in a bunch of units that could be overwhelmed by his mobility, but sending in sustainable capture weight here, I think, is very, very nice. On the backside, we do see more infantry coming in. It's going to be Chaos Warriors and Chaos Hounds on the way, as the Warriors with their fat, erect 110 armor just hanging in there, man. Hanging in there real, real well and just grinding value down. It's kind of cool to see how the Chaos Warriors of Khorne, due to their offensive output, actually trade a little bit better into the Wildwood Rangers than like basic Chaos Warriors on the roster. I think it's kind of a cool tech from Bagosh. Because normally when I play Warriors of Chaos, I'm so afraid of Wildwood Rangers that I don't tech into those kind of units, right? But he's doing it, and he's making it look pretty decent here. Flesh Hounds on the way in. More Flesh Hounds are coming in basic Warhounds, and the capture weight is now coming back to the Blood God, as we do see Bagosh pulling ahead on points. It's going to be a close game here, but man, that is a big value difference of almost 4,000 or 5,000. And we are feeling it on the battlefield, right? Bagosh is able to just kind of leave units AFK, not AFK, but defensive on other points, and allocate small portions of his army to contest the field, which is allowing him to play against Anticity's mobile game here. And that's also another thing I'm kind of learning in this matchup. I would normally think that Blood Beast wouldn't be that good against Wood Elves. I'd be like, oh, my school thought, maybe Minotaurs are better because they have the 70 armor, so against some of the shooting as well as the light cav, they're going to trade better. But yeah, somehow the Palpatine Blood Beasts look really, really good. I wonder about them versus the Minotaurs in this matchup, right? Because the armor piercing is a bit wasted. Wood Elves don't have too much armor. But Blood Beasts, it's kind of a nice middle ground, I suppose, between the Minotaurs with great weapons and the dual wielding ones, in that they're good against infantry and could also fight big targets. Kind of cool. Alright guys, so the objective is taken back here. Anticity going to be using the dreaded Loix Blessing to try and sneak away from his opponent and pounce on one of the objectives. This one going to be held by Marauders and Chaos Warriors, most likely, with reinforcing Chaos Warriors here. Middle is a little bit fickle, but with several infantry units and decent health, he should be able to hold it here. And going to be coming up with Wildwood Rangers, and his army's looking really raggedy. And here's the thing, the Spellsinger of Life has already fallen out of the game. Isn't really going to contribute much, whereas Valkia is going to be a perpetual, contender, right? She's a combat character, and that's one of the perks of having a combat lord, right? Is they will be effective the whole game as long as you can keep them healthy and active. Whereas caster characters, when Winds of Magic can fall off, you kind of do struggle a little bit. But again, the cool thing about caster characters is they're very cheap, so then you can usually go a little bit wider. But Khorne doesn't have that problem because they don't have any casters, so they're just chilling. Warriors rotating to the middle. And we do see Hounds coming across as well as Valkia the Bloody. She's, gotten blood-eating combat this game, but her and Sopnir have been having a good old time. She does take down one of those units right there. It's not going to be the cinematic trailer all over again. That is for damn sure. And how are the Chaos Warriors looking? They're hanging in there like champs. They are going to be going after the Glade Riders here. And more warriors are going to be surging forth as the Marauders are on their way over. Chaos Warriors reinforcing the outside point. It's, in the matter of moments, going to be a situation where Bagosh could win on just one, so he's just reinforcing here. He does have some Flesh Hounds AFK. Can move those guys back over there, but they probably are just chasing something off the battlefield. Now, Valkia going to be going for the kill on the enemy Lord. Will Anticity lose his Lord? I don't think so. It looks like he's going to be able to slip away using Loix Blessing to get the speed to outrun Valkia, so the character on the horse is going to be quite a bit quicker. And yeah, Wildwood Rangers doing well against the Warriors, but when the Chaos Harambes get there, it kind of changes the entire picture. And these Blood Beasts able to get the job done. GG, well played. Really fun match. It was kind of like, yeah, just the mass meat wall of armor and infantry versus the mass mobility and kind of a specialist cav. I thought that was a really cool matchup. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that one as well. 89 kills here, 2,700 value on Valkia. Man, she really farmed it. But the Chaos Warriors with the Giga Chads, look at this. 500, 1,100, 1,200 on this one, just about 900, 1,200 there. What's not to love? Pretty good stuff. And the Harambes, 1,100, 800, 1,700, and 900 there too. For Ent's army, a lot of mobility, a lot of Stag Knights, a lot of different pieces like that. Not really using any static archers or anything like that, but made for a really fun game, honestly. How'd the ZOATS do? 1,000 and 1,000. Not terrible, but not great either. Certainly didn't pay for themselves. And the Flesh to Stone combo, very cool to see it attempted. But again, I think you would probably agree with the conclusion that traditional lore of life healing would probably be more effective here. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? GG, well played, guys. We'll see you around. Take care of yourselves. And that is it for today.